Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh, do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Let's say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever. Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is? I don't have rage issues! I have nothing to prove to you. When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the start of spooky season on Citizen Dame. I'm so excited. I'm Lauren Humphries Brooks, and with me, as always, is Karen Peterson. Hello, Karen.
Hello.
And we are actually recording at the very start of spooky season. It is October 1st when we're recording. So yesterday was my birthday, so it's the end of the month of Lauren. And now we get into spooky season. So it's this wonderful little, transition. Yes. So how are you today, Karen?
I'm doing all right. Just trucking along. What else can you do at this point?
It's pretty much all of us. Yeah. Everyone that I talk to, just like, how are you? I'm fine.
I'm present. I am present and accounted for.
Yes.
How are you? How was your birthday?
My birthday was lovely. Had a lovely dinner and cake. I worked most of the day, but I did get dinner and cake, which was really nice, and lots of wonderful phone calls and people telling me happy birthday. So and some presents as well.
Good.
So that was all really nice. Yeah. So it was a good birthday. I am 39, and I have to say that for the last month.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. For the last month, I thought I was 40. I was turning 40. And then I was reminded several times, no, you're actually turning 39. I was like, good. All right, that's fine. We'll have to see when I turn 40. I don't feel really worried about it particularly, but yes, I'm still in my 30s.
Yeah, good.
So yeah.
40 is great, honestly.
I mean, I'm sort of looking forward to it. So in like a lot of my group of friends, I've often been the youngest person in like a given group, and that always, like, I have friends who just say, "Oh, I'm turning 40," and I'm like, "I'm 39." So it's all, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm 41." It's like, I'm just now turning 40. So it's kind of nice.
Well, good.
And it does feel very autumnal here in New York City also. It's gotten cooler out. And by cooler, I mean it was 70 today instead of like 85. But yeah, cooler definitely feels more like, okay, it's fall weather here.
Nice.
Yes. So what about you, Karen?
It was like in the 80s today, but it was weird because when I walked outside of my office to leave work, it felt very pleasant. It did not feel like it was in the 80s. It felt like low 70s. It was really nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yes. So for the start of spooky season, we have kind of an interesting lineup, I think, for this year. Because we decided that we were going to kind of go back in time just a little bit to some of the first films that scared us when we were young. As well as we're going to end the entire season with Halloween from 1978. We're actually going to talk about John Carpenter's Halloween, the original Halloween,
which somehow we've never talked about.
I feel like it's one of those that's so ubiquitous. It's like, well, of course we've talked about this, but no, we haven't.
Yeah.
So I think we have an interesting sort of lineup on this, but we have like we're kind of all over the place actually.
It's gonna be good, yeah.
Because the first two films we're doing are definitely like younger films. They're among the first films that like we really experienced as like horror. And then we're going to talk about The Fly for some reason because I haven't seen it.
Why did we pick The Fly?
Because I haven't seen it, and you were like, "How have you not seen The Fly?" And I'm like, "I just haven't."
Goldblum.
Yeah, and so we're talking about the David Cronenberg The Fly. I have seen both The Fly and Return of the Fly, featuring Vincent Price. Of course, I have, but not the one featuring Jeff Goldblum. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to end everything on Halloween. So Yeah, today we're going to start out with a film from 1948 that, I shit you not, was the first horror film I ever saw. Scared the bejesus out of me. Scared me so badly that, like, I think my father thought he had scarred me for life, which he had in his own way. And is still just one of my favorite horror comedies, as indeed it should be everybody's, really. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. So before we get into the whole thing, I am going to tell my little story about why this movie terrified me.
Yes. I'm so excited.
So just to set the stage, I think I've told a version of the story a couple of times on this podcast, but you get to hear it again. So just to set the stage, I grew up until about the age of 13 in a house that I always describe as sort of a dilapidated Victorian mansion, because that's basically what it was. It had originally been like a summer home that had been built in the mid-19th century. But it was one of those places that was like, it was a summer home that was like basically a cabin, right? And then it began to grow bigger and bigger because they kept on adding on to it. So it turned into this big house, painted sort of a weird brick red that was like chipping paint when we lived there. And that basically my dad was a young college professor. My mom was an actress. They moved to this college town. My parents were able to rent it for cheap, basically. And initially they only rented part of the house because it had been divided into apartments. But by the time I was born, they were living in the whole house. So I grew up, like my entire childhood was spent in this dilapidated Victorian mansion on 9 acres of land that included like forests and fields and a garbage dump way in the backyard where my cousins and I would dig up like old medicine bottles and stuff from like the early 1900s, and a grave in the backyard.
That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Like I will say 100%, this was one of the best places to grow up. My parents, it was the 90s, my parents would like open the door, they'd be like, go play. And I would basically have 9 acres of land to play on and like a sledding hill. I always had my faithful dog by my side. And then my parents were like, if anybody bothers her, the dog will eat them. So, she absolutely would have. So I grew up in what I can really only describe as a perfect haunted house.
Yeah.
It was big, it was rambly, it was kind of falling apart. Bats would regularly get into, because it was an old house and it was in the middle of the woods, bats would regularly get into the bedrooms, including my bedroom when I was a kid. This is very important to this story. And so this is where I lived, and I was about 4 years old the first time my mother went on a several-day conference to, I think, Jonesboro, someplace like that. Yeah. So she was a storyteller at the time, and so she was going to this several-day conference. This was the first time she was going to leave me for this extended period of time with my dad. My dad was always very hands-on father. Like, it wasn't anything big particularly, but this was the first time mom was going away. And so my dad was like, oh, we'll have a lot of fun. So we'll like make pizza, like we'll watch some movies, we'll make brownies. We made brownies and we forgot to put the sugar in the brownies.
Oh no. So the horror started early that night.
And then we did put the sugar. We finally remembered to put the sugar in, but it got really weird. Because if you don't mix things correctly, it's like don't put the wet ingredients in at the right time, things get strange. And so my dad, being a good father, he was like, I'm going to introduce Lauren to the Universal monsters. And perfect way to do this, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It's a comedy. It's not scary at all. She's 4 years old. It'll be funny. It'll be like, it's a classic film. She'll get to see Dracula and Frankenstein the Wolfman. This is a perfect movie for Lauren. So me being a trusting child, of course, I was very excited about this. I liked classic movies, even I watched the Marx Brothers all the time. And so my dad started showing me this film. And when I say that it scared, like it terrified me. like I got to a certain point in this film where I remember vividly running out of the room and like
Oh,
screaming. And my poor father, who is taking care of his 4-year-old daughter, it was like, oh my God, I've destroyed her psyche. Like I've shown her this. It terrified me. I remember really, really well sitting in our kitchen, which like looked out onto the backyard, onto like the woods, right? The dark woods. And looking out and being absolutely positive that I could see Dracula out there. I remember, like, I just remember it so, so clearly. We did not watch the entire film. I think my dad did manage to convince me to watch a little bit more. And then another moment came up and I was like, nope, I'm done. So this movie really, really, really terrified me.
oh,
Which is hilarious when you watch the movie now, but I was 4.
yeah.
However, as I've told my father numerous times later, like, because he said, I really thought that I just like destroyed your mind, basically. It's like, oh God, my daughter has been entrusted to me for a few days and I've completely destroyed her psyche. And I was like, well, you kind of did. Because like I have quite a thing for horror now. I have quite a thing for vampires, particularly for Dracula. And like I've got multiple tattoos of Dracula and vampires and bats.
Look what he did.
My thesis in college was about the novel Dracula and was specifically about like I wrote about Bela Lugosi. I wrote about the novel Dracula. I wrote about the film. So vampires are a major thing for me. So yes, this is where it all started. This was the first horror film I ever saw. So I just wanted to relate that to explain why this is such an important movie for me.
I love that. I'm glad it all worked out and that you gave it another chance eventually.
Yes, I did eventually watch the entire film, and obviously, like I think I watch it now every year during spooky season at some point, just because I do think it is a lot of fun. It is a classic. And in terms of I honestly introducing kids to like particularly to the classic monsters, I think this is a great film for it. Because it is very funny and it does have very creepy moments and is just like this is a good kind of way into that sort of world of horror. That's also very gentle and just very amusing. And kind of, I think that my dad's perspective was, well, this is sort of making fun of it to a certain degree, like it's not really scary. And that was the idea behind it. But to me, I just saw a guy who turned into a bat and I was just like, no, I'm done.
And that's the thing is like, I can totally see your dad's line of thinking there and why he would have thought this is a great idea. And also why it was not a great idea.
So I said to you last night, Kara, like, I want you to guess what was the point in the film where I ran out of the room the first time. So what do you think? Do you have any idea?
I mean, I would think that it's when Wilbur is like has his back to the coffin and the coffin keeps like opening and he doesn't know that that's happening.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the point. That was the point where I was like, I'm finished right now. I am done. This is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, because you had asked me to think about that, and so when I was watching it, I was like trying to imagine in the mind of a 4-year-old, and I was like, this is terrifying for a 4-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
it's a little spooky for a 48-year-old.
See, this is the thing. I think that actually that scene, one of the things that I think makes Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein work so well is that it does have those moments, like genuinely creepy moments. I'm not going to say that like it's scary, but like that whole scene is the tension is developed really well. That like that element of like Wilbur is constantly saying like Dracula's in the coffin and his friend is like, no, he's not. It's just like, that's ridiculous. Just like, no, Dracula actually is in the coffin. Like that lack of belief, all of those things. It is quite frightening.
Yeah. Well, and then when Chick finally opens the coffin and it's empty and it's like, we know that there was somebody in there because we saw him.
Yeah, there's a great line that I think Chick says, I know there's no such a person as Dracula. You know there's no such a person as Dracula. And then Wilbur says, but does Dracula know it? And that to me, like, that is actually one of the exciting things about horror in general to me is exactly that is like we know there's no such thing as zombies or vampires or whatever, but do they know that? Did they know that they don't exist?
Right, exactly. So I will say this, surprisingly, I am so embarrassed to admit this was my first time ever actually seeing this movie. I don't know. I didn't grow up with Abbott and Costello. I wish I had. I feel kind of ripped off. We had the Three Stooges. That was what was constantly on like reruns when I was a kid, and I never loved the Three Stooges. But as an adult, I've seen some Abbott and Costello, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have totally loved this when I was a kid, way more than Three Stooges. Because what I didn't like about the Stooges, and I mean, I think that they were talented men, and I think that some of the stuff that they did was funny, but it relied entirely on physical comedy.
Yeah.
And what I love about Abbott and Costello is that it relies so heavily on their dialogue, their patter, their rhythm of the way that they talk. And that is what, even as a kid, I was always really drawn to, very funny language.
Yeah.
And so I would have been much more into Abbott and Costello than the Three Stooges. So I feel kind of cheated in that sense.
Well, yeah. So I grew up with primarily, I was kind of the opposite. I grew up with primarily Abbott and Costello and the Marx Brothers were the ones that my parents showed me. I didn't watch the Three Stooges at all. I think I've seen actually maybe one Three Stooges film in total. And I've seen some of the shorts and things like that. And yeah, it never, for me, the Three Stooges always feels like kind of dumb comedy.
Yeah, dumb and mean too.
Yeah, and I think that there's some of that. There's some of that with Abbott and Costello in particular, but there is like so much of the humor does depend on that kind of that vaudeville patter, which is what they have. They started out on vaudeville as a team, and it's so much what the Marx Brothers had with the same kind of the sort of really quick back and forth. And this kind of understanding of the way that language works. And Abbott and Costello's best films really do rely on that. Like you can see there are a number of their films. Actually, this one has better integration of everything, but there are a number of their films where it's basically just a setup for them to do a vaudeville routine. You get that in, I think it's the Naughty 90s is the one where they do Who's on First, right? Which is just famous. We get that a number of times. Buck Privates has something similar, things like that. It's basically like we're going to set up a situation where they get to do these routines.
My brother and I actually did Who's on First for a talent show once in high school. We killed it.
It's classic. Like, I mean, even if you've never seen the Who's on First routine, the Who's on First routine.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great.
Love it. So Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein comes out in 1948. This is kind of interesting in terms of the history of the Universal monsters as well. So this is kind of the tail end of that. So this is post-war. If you think about it, Dracula and Frankenstein come out in 1931, right? So this is 1948. And there'd been a series, particularly of Frankenstein movies, that had basically had diminishing returns especially for Universal. It just wasn't as popular anymore. The kind of Frankenstein as a monster, like the Frankenstein monster, had very much been relegated to B movies, and just wasn't as well known, wasn't as popular. This was getting into the age of the atomic monsters, and I always think that even the decline of the Universal monsters is kind of symptomatic of the changes in the world, right? So you get these creatures that appear in 1931. The world has changed massively by 1948. You've got World War II in the middle of all that. You've got the Holocaust in the middle of all of that. And what frightens you now is maybe not going to be this big lumbering corpse, really. And so at this point, Universal was on its last legs in a lot of ways. They'd gained some investment from the J. Arthur Rank Corporation in Britain. They become Universal International, but they had very few major stars. Abbott and Costello were among their only big box office draws, and they were having diminishing returns as well, both because of the quality of their films and because their personal relationship was really fragmenting. And this was kind of like a last gasp in a lot of ways for some of these things, and it actually ended up becoming one of like the most successful film in the Frankenstein series since 1931, since the original Frankenstein. It was big, it was popular. It's funny because Boris Karloff does not appear in this movie, even though both Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi are playing the parts that they originated. But yeah, this is an incredibly like successful movie, even though pretty much almost everyone involved in it thought it was shit. Like Abbott and Costello didn't really like it. The producers were pissed off about it. Lon Chaney thought it was shit. Bela Lugosi was actually the only one who was like, "This is great."
He's having a good old time.
He's having a great time. Yeah, exactly. And it kind of signaled this sort of shift of these monsters had stopped being scary in a lot of ways, but they had become funny. And so it struck this really good balance between those elements of horror and the humor inherent in it. And so it goes back and forth. I think actually rewatching it this time, it does have a very nice balance. And you get that like experience of these guys being really frightened of these monsters, not believing that they even exist. And then the like ending all of it with this big like climactic chase where Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and Dracula are having like a fight while Abbott and Costello try to get out of the castle that they're trapped in.
And that actually felt a little bit reminiscent to me of the end, like the big climax at the end of the 1931 Frankenstein, where like the villagers are coming to storm the castle, essentially. Like just the way that was staged and the way that it's built up, I thought, oh wow, I like that there's this little bit of a tie-in, even though the circumstances are completely different.
Yeah, it's it was funny because watching it this time, it's like it's very much like Looney Tunes in a lot of ways. It's sort of that referentiality, like you can picture Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig, right, running away from these guys. It's like, oh my god, it's Dracula! Like, oh my god, it's the monster! But at the same time, they are. I think the fact that you've got Bela Lugosi playing Dracula and Lon Chaney Jr. playing the Wolfman is quite important as well, because there is that like these guys are iconic, and even in 1948 they were iconic, and they were beloved. Right, these are the classic, the iconic monsters, the classic monsters, and because of that, there's like this edge of like almost a meta element. Like it's a little bit like they're in on the joke, right? I love the sections of the film where Talbot, played by Lon Chaney Jr., is constantly begging people to lock him up. He's so
please,
sad.
I'm gonna kill people, please.
He's so
please
sad. Do. He's just like I because when the moon comes out, I will become a wolf. And then Wilbur says something like, "Yeah, you and 5,000 other guys." It's that kind of thing that there is this like respect for the monsters, and also sort of a knowingness about the monsters, and an awareness that some of this is quite silly, and it isn't actually that scary, but it strikes an interesting, I think, balance to it. Not so different from something like Arsenic and Old Lace, which we talked about last week, which has those elements that the horror comedy, the elements of humor, the elements of kind of a wink at the camera, and then also the terror that goes along with it.
Yeah. Just on the subject of Bela Lugosi and Lon Chaney Jr., I somehow never realized that they reprised their roles for this movie. I just assumed it was different actors. And so when the coffin first opens, for Dracula's coffin first opens, I was like, wait a second, what's Bela Lugosi doing here? Oh, and even seeing the Wolfman before that on the phone, and I was just like, What? I'm so confused. I didn't realize that they were in the movie. It was a delightful surprise.
Well, and even Glenn Strange, who had played the Frankenstein Monster a couple of times by this point, who plays the Frankenstein Monster. So yeah, Karloff was the only one that they didn't get. And there's also a very delightful little cameo at the end as well. And in fact, even in one,
which I was waiting for it to be Claude Rains. It wasn't Claude Rains.
It was not Claude Rains. It's not, I mean, Claude,
it's fine. It's fine. They got the next best thing.
The next best thing. Thank you very much. Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't seen this movie, spoiler alert, Vincent Price does show up right at the very end as the Invisible Man.
Yeah, which right when that happened, I had been thinking before it did, as they are getting into the boat, I was thinking in my head, man, they got all these monsters. I can't believe they didn't get Claude Rains to do Invisible Man. That would have been great. And then right then, Vincent Price starts talking, and I was like, oh my gosh. So good.
Well, Price has such a distinct voice. Like as soon as you hear like the first syllable there, you're like, oh my God, it's Vincent Price.
Yep.
And of course he had played the Invisible Man in The Invisible Man Returns.
He did, yeah.
It was referential. It just like he wasn't the original The Invisible Man.
Right. And honestly, I think for this movie, it actually worked better to have it be Vincent Price. So, but Bela Lugosi, this was his last time playing Dracula, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he does like, I enjoy Bela Lugosi in this so much. He did scare me when I was very small. But I love him. I love him in this because he has a sense of humor about it, and like he's got some wonderful lines like what we need is young blood and brains. It's just like he's got that drawl, right? That like the really overemphasized accent. You young people making the most of life while it lasts. It's delightful,
Yeah. There's just so many. I mean, obviously, it's Abbott and Costello. There's so many great lines throughout the movie that are just. I was cracking up the whole time, and it just like in the beginning when you've got Wilbur and Chick and they're at work. They work in like a postal office, and McDougal and Wilbur are talking, and McDougal wants them to drop these packages off these very large packages off at his house, and it really late, and Wilbur's like, I'm a union man and I only work 16 hours a day, and McDougal's like, no, it's an 8-hour work day, and he goes, well, I belong to 2 unions. Just stuff like that. It's so funny.
The patter is great, and and when they get going about it, and like when they make these little jokes, these little jabs at each other, all of it is just, it's very entertaining. So I was actually going to ask you, what did you think of the movie? But it sounds like you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. This is going in my regular rotation because this was so fun. I think because it is a great blend of it's a great way to tie the monsters in a way that is very funny but does not make the monsters a joke. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about it, because like the monsters are still serious, they're still deadly, but we're having fun with it because it's more lighthearted story. So we know Wilbur and Chick are not actually going to get bitten by Dracula. We know they're not going to get turned into werewolves. Frankenstein's not going to eat their brains when Wilbur gets kidnapped and he's, locked up, and they're going to do a brain transplant and put his brain in Frankenstein's and he can live forever. We know that that's going to get stopped. It won't happen. But yet, the way that it's developed, it's still entertaining. It's still a little thrilling. And then ultimately just so funny. And I had a great time, and it uses a lot of really good dialogue, but also a lot of good physical comedy too.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that, and I think one of the things that this film has been praised for is exactly what you're saying is the respect for the monsters themselves, that not ultimately not making them the butt of the joke.
Right.
It's not like, oh, people said this was a spoof and stuff like that. It's like, but Dracula's not funny, right? Like there
Yeah.
is this sort of like, I was just quoting some of Bela Lugosi's lines, but it's funny because you like, oh, he's Dracula, right? So it's scary actually. Like he's actually talking about drinking your blood.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and
yeah.
like just going back to what you were saying earlier, the joke in this movie is not, oh, these monsters are a joke. It's these monsters are real and nobody believes it because they're not supposed to be. And that's what's
Mm-hmm.
funny.
Yeah. So the scene that this scared me, where Dracula's like opening his coffin, you're hearing the creaking of the coffin, and it's all taking place while Wilbur is reading Dracula's legend. So the initial plot is that Chick and Wilbur, Chick is Abbott and Wilbur is Costello, are like, yeah, they work in a package office, and they have this delivery that they're supposed to be doing to this house of horrors, right? And it's supposed to be the remains of Count Dracula and the original body of the Frankenstein monster. That's the whole idea behind it. So they're delivering these packages, right? And Wilbur is in this house of horrors surrounded by wax figures of like creepy things, right? And he's reading the legend of Dracula. It's like, okay, so this is, it's kind of the rundown of here's who Dracula was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as he's doing it, he's hearing the coffin opening and like the candle that is on the side of the coffin, because the lights have all gone out, because of course there's a thunderstorm. The candle is like sliding down the coffin, and he's like, Dracula's here. And his
Uh-huh.
friend, of course, the joke is his friend never notices, because every time he shows up, it's like, oh no, Dracula's not here. Like, what are you talking about? Stop. And what I really like about it, honestly, is that it's stop reading scary stories in the dark in the middle of this house of horrors. Like, don't do
Uh-huh.
that, and you won't scare yourself. And Wilbur reacts exactly how I reacted, how everybody who likes scary stories ever reacts. Just like, I shouldn't do that, but I'm also gonna. Like, I'm gonna
Yep.
read this scary story in the dark and and like, so it's this wonderful, like, again, that sort of there's a little bit of meta-ness there going on, where it's like, this is fun, right? We do try to scare ourselves. We do like get in a situation where like, oh my God, I think I hear a coffin opening. And yeah, and of course the monsters are real. Dracula is in the coffin. The Frankenstein monster is actually like in this package. The whole plot is that Dracula like wants to put Wilbur's brain into the Frankenstein monster's body, because the monster has too much of like has too much free will,
Yeah.
and needs to be dumber in order for Dracula to control him. It's not clear exactly what Dracula is going to do with the monster once he gets Wilbur's brain
No
in.
idea.
Like what his plan actually is, but this is the plot. This is what he's going to do, and it's very effective.
And Talbot, who is the wolf man, knows that these packages contain these real monsters, and he's trying to stop the delivery at first, and then he's just trying to basically save everybody from Frankenstein and Dracula with the very inconveniently timed full moon that keeps turning him into a werewolf.
Well, see, so this is the other section of the film that I do think is actually quite scary, is when Talbot is there, and we've seen him turn into a werewolf a couple of times by this point.
Yeah.
So Talbot is there, and he tells Wilbur, you have to lock me in my room, because if you don't, I'm going to kill people, because I turn into a wolf. Of course, no one believes that he actually turns into a wolf. It's like, this is what happens. Please lock me in my room. So he does, but then there's this whole sequence where he's like forgotten his suitcase in their room. So he's like, oh, I've got to bring Talbot his suitcase. And by this point, Talbot has transformed into the Wolfman. And so there's this whole sequence where Wilbur is basically being pursued by the Wolfman without knowing it. And it's
Yep.
quite tense, actually. Like, it's quite like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
how is he going to get out of this room without being murdered?
It seems impossible. And yet, and this is one of the things I think that is funny, is if he was aware that Talbot was a wolf at that moment, he would have been too scared to get himself away. But because he was totally unaware and just going about his business, he managed to just kind of get out of the situation without being all freaked out about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a good kind of development of narrative tension. The audience has information that the characters don't. And so we're watching the sequence, and it's all done in the so it's that combination again of horror and comedy. It's kind of walking that line between, like, we know, like you said earlier, he's Costello, he's not going to get murdered. We know that, like, he's one of our comic leads, right? They're not going to kill him off halfway through the movie.
Right.
But the question is, how is he going to get out of there with the wolf man who is trying to kill him? And my favorite part of that whole thing is that he goes back because he steals like an orange from the fruit bowl. And he's like, oh, I wonder if Talbot counted these. And so he like goes back to unlock the door with the wolfman on the other side, waiting for him to open the door. And it's like, oh my God, it's so well done. Yeah, it's delightful.
It is.
I do like, so when we get to like the castle which apparently is in Florida.
Because there's lots of those in Florida.
There's lots of medieval castles in Florida this is a perfect place for Dracula, by the way, Florida. It's exactly where Dracula should be.
Yeah, of course. Endless sun.
Yes, endless sun and the swamp, and like actually the Wolfman seems like he's probably pretty much at home there, but not so much Dracula. But so they get to this castle, and so it sort of turns into this old dark house story, where you've got like secret passages and Wilbur constantly trying to prove that Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman are real, and him being the only one who ever sees them. And he's completely unable to do this, and like people, and of course at the same time he is being entrapped because they want to like kidnap him so that they can put his brain into the monster's body. And so this poor little guy is constantly trying to convince people Dracula's here and he's after me. And somehow he doesn't recognize the fact that Dr. Lejos is in fact Dracula. Thank you very much, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, for not doing Alucard, because I've heard that one so many times. And in fact, there's a Hammer film where like Van Helsing solves this really complicated puzzle to figure out that Alucard is Dracula spelled backwards. It's just like, he's like, oh my God, I figured it out. It's like, yes, literally everyone knows that. But thank you for not using Alucard. It drives me crazy. So he doesn't even recognize that Dr. Lejos is in fact Dracula because he's not wearing his cape. Obviously. By the way,
in Spanish, lejos means far.
Means what?
Far, like he's from far away.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Dr. Far Away.
I just thought that was a little fun fact.
I was actually trying to figure out like why that name, because it didn't seem to have any real reference to Dracula.
I think it is right, and I think it is kind of that, like a sort of a nod to he is a foreigner. He's from exactly what I said. Like he's from far away.
He's from far away, exactly. Yeah. It's so I don't know. What else would you like to talk about? It is a lot of fun. And then by the time we get to the end, where you get this like chase sequence happening where finally everybody believes poor little Wilbur, but not before the little guy's been kidnapped.
I mean, I love that everyone's constantly like picking on Wilbur. They call him dumb, they call him fat, whatever. He's getting all the girls. I mean, okay, one of them is trying to take his brain and put it into an 8-foot monster, but still. And I really enjoy him. He's so funny. I
He
keep
is,
saying that. Like he's just so funny, but he is.
yes, he is. He's very sweet. Like the Costello's on-screen persona is just very like, yeah, he's always kind of behind the eight ball, but he is always getting the girls. He's all like
Mhm.
all the girls are after.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that. And I like that that is here too. And I love how he's just so whatever about it. Like this is just normal and anybody could do this. There was something else I was gonna say. What was it? It was about just like some scenes that I love the
Yeah,
way that they're done. In the castle, when they're, all the stuff down into the dungeons, there's a lot of physical comedy there with the
yeah.
door, the swinging hidden door, and the like the way that they use the stairs. I love the use of shadow and light in this. I think it's so
Hmm.
reminiscent of those 30s films and just really, really done well. And it adds to the creepiness and also assists in some of the humor too,
Yeah.
because like some of the use of, somebody casting a really large shadow on a wall or something like that. It's just very well shot, very well done.
Yeah, and it does lean into that sort of this is weird kind of thing. Like, okay, so we've got this really old, creepy castle in the middle of nowhere in Florida.
Yeah.
And Wilbur's constantly being like, this is strange. Something is strange. All of this is strange. Everyone's like, no, you're imagining things. What's the matter with you? You're crazy. Like all of that
Right.
stuff. And he's just like, no. And of course, we as the audience are just like, no, this is strange because that's
This is
Dracula.
actually strange. Yes.
Yeah, I love the spinning door thing is and that's something that gets used again in like Young Frankenstein.
Oh
Um
yeah, we've seen that a lot, but it's just really effective here.
well and it's because it's that, we were talking about earlier, that belief, lack of belief, right? So he's
Hmm.
constantly, Wilbur is the only one who's basically seen these monsters and knows that they're real, and he's trying to convince everybody that they're real and that this isn't like, he's not crazy, that this is like actually a threat. But of course the joke is that every single time he like walks into the room and there's Dracula and Frankenstein, and he's like, Dracula and Frankenstein are in there, and then someone else goes, it's just like, there, no one's here at all, right?
Right. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
because like at the end of that, because when they after Abbott and Costello come back out or yeah, and Abbott, it's just like, okay, where are they? They're not here
Mm-hmm.
because they've just been inside that room. And Costello's just like, oh well, they must be in there. And it's like, no. And you can see it from both sides. We know the truth
Yeah.
because we've been experiencing it with Costello, but we also understand as adults, we understand where Abbott's coming from because why would he think that? They were just in there.
Yes.
He doesn't realize that they were standing on the same little platform
It's a,
and spinning around too.
that's an interesting point actually, of saying because we're adults, because there is a lot, and this, going back to my childhood, that sense of being believed, because one of the things that kids do is just like, there's a monster in the closet, right? There's an alligator under my bed, that kind of thing. And as adults we're like, that's ridiculous, that's not true. But one of the things that horror films trade on a lot is exactly that, is this belief in the monster, in the evil, and whatever is coming after you, and it being real, right?
Yeah.
And the adults, the adults in the room don't believe you, and that's part of the horror of it. And what's happening with Abbott and Costello in this is that Costello is basically a child, right? He keeps on saying, this is true, I've seen it, he's experienced it. Like, it's not something that is in his imagination, he's seen them multiple times.
Right.
And he's saying, this is true, I saw it. And everybody, all of the adults around him are saying, no, it's not. It isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is like, I think for the audience, in a lot of ways, it's doing what a lot of horror films do, which is putting you in this position, the child position, the innocent position, where you know that the horror is coming after you, but you can't convince anybody that it's real. And it's very real to you as well. 4-year-old me was right to be scared.
Yeah, totally. And I think I'm sorry, I sound a little different now because I had some technical difficulties, but Um, I think yes, what I was getting at is exactly that. It totally makes sense for kids to be scared and also a little frustrated that nobody's listening because we can, like, you can see you're a child and you can see, no, he's right there, the monster's right there, listen to Wilbur, he knows what he's talking about, and nobody's listening. And for a kid, that's going to be a very frustrating experience because we experience that every day in our life. I mean, even as adults we experience that too. Watching it from the, like, being older, having lived life and being able to see both experiences, like, we can see also that it makes perfect sense why Chick doesn't believe him, because Chick's not seeing what he's seeing. But for kids who are seeing everything play out at the same time on the screen, to them, it doesn't necessarily make sense why Chick can't just see him. He's right there.
Well,
Does that make sense?
No, exactly. And that, I think that was, like, honestly, I think that was part of my experience as a child, because I was one of those kids. I will say I was a scaredy cat in a lot of ways. And I was for quite a long time. And then at some point I got into horror and it was like, oh, I'm not scared anymore. Yes, certain things still freak me out, but whatever. But yeah, so I was a scaredy cat in a lot of ways, but I was one of those kids that I was like, there is a monster under my bed. There is a gremlin in the closet. There is if I don't run across and jump into my bed, the alligator under my bed is also going to get me. Like it, but it's very real, right? When you're a child, and you can be told over and over again, no, it's not true. And what's quite funny is that, of course, my poor father, having showed me this film in which I was like, okay, Dracula's going to try to kill me. That's something that's going to happen in my life. And my poor father was like trying to convince me, no, he's not. Right. And of course, just like, I saw that movie, I saw what no one believed him either.
Exactly.
But as the audience, we're put into that sort of childish position, right, where it's like, no, he's right, he's telling the truth.
Yep. That's part of why it's just so enjoyable and why it works for all ages.
Yeah, exactly. And I do love that final chase sequence where they're just like, because the Wolfman, like, Talbot shows up, poor Talbot, who's trying to help and just keeps turning into a werewolf. And like losing his mind. So he like goes after Dracula. Dracula at one point throws a flower pot at the Wolfman, and it's just one of my favorite little moments. They're like so funny, fighting across the castle. The monster, who doesn't really have any clue what's happening, is just like destroying things as he goes. And Abbott and Costello are fleeing. They're just trying to get out of the castle. And it is a great, like, final chase sequence. One little element that I never thought about until this time that I watched the movie is that Costello keeps on calling the Frankenstein monster Junior. He calls him Frankie a couple of times, but he calls him Junior a bunch. And I was like, why the hell is he calling him Junior? It's like, he's Frankenstein Junior. He's the son of Frankenstein.
Well, because he's not Frankenstein. Frankenstein is the doctor who made him.
Yeah, he's Junior. Yeah, exactly. And you do have to know, Abbott and Costello do not actually meet Frankenstein in this movie, because there is no Dr. Frankenstein.
That's true. That's true. That's really funny. Now I'm gonna have to think about that the rest of the night.
So any final thoughts about this one, Karen?
Just that it is delightful. It was on Tubi and it left yesterday, so presumably it pops up somewhere for Spooky Movie Month. I can't imagine they would just not have it on. They would have it on all the way through September and then take it off for October. So I'm wondering if it went to Peacock for Halloween.
Yeah, it's often been on Peacock. In fact, I was surprised that it was on Tubi this time. It's usually on Peacock. It is rentable. And like, honestly, particularly if you haven't seen this one, it is just a lot of fun. Like, if you're just in the mood for a light sort of horror comedy, it really just hits the spot.
It really does, yeah.
I do also. So Abbott and Costello did a number of these sort of monster movies where they would meet various monsters. They meet the Invisible Man later. They meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They do meet Boris Karloff, not as Frankenstein monster, but as actually, it's literally like Abbott and Costello meet the killer Boris Karloff. Like that's the name of the film. He's like, I forget what he like plays this psychic or something like that, but he's just Boris Karloff. But my favorite of, if you want to watch another spooky, kind of spooky-ish Abbott and Costello movie, if you can find it, it's usually on someplace like the Internet Archive, but if you can find it, Abbott and Costello Hold That Ghost is a legitimately well-made kind of old dark house movie. And it's got like secret passages. It's got some very funny secondary characters. The women particularly are hilarious. It does have to word of warning that there are a few fairly racist jokes in it. Not extended, but definitely there's like, this is like 1942, I think. So it's unfortunate, but it's a really well done kind of old dark house movie. So I highly recommend it if you can get a hold of it.
But yeah, I think that's about all I had. Just watch it. It's so fun.
Yes, I agree. And so for next week, we are going to watch another movie that's very hard to get a hold of. I'm not entirely certain why, but we are going to be watching Watcher in the Woods from 1980.
The original 1980, not the remake they did with Angelica Houston a couple years ago. No disrespect to Angelica Houston, but this movie is perfect and they should never have remade it.
Well, it stars Betty Davis, which I am very excited about. Yeah, so it is. You can find it. I'm going to say right now, it's not on like Disney Plus or any place like that, but you can find it. So just search for it and give yourself, scroll down a little bit and you'll find it.
Be a little creative.
Yeah, so that'll be next week, and I've never seen that one, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
I'm excited to tell the story about the first time I watched it because it's pretty fun.
I am excited to hear it. So that will be for next week, and I think that is going to close us out for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and of course, we want to thank our patrons, who include Abby, Audra, Brian, Connor, Estefania, Ferdinand, Heather, James, Judy, Carriata, Matt, Michelle, MK, Monty, Nanina, Noel, Robert, Roxy, Steve, and Sharon. Thank you so much for continuing to listen to us and to support us. And if anyone has not received their pins, stickers, etc., please let me know. I think I mailed everything out, but just, if you're in the United States, let me know if you haven't received them and I will get them out to you immediately. Of course, you can join their number. We are on patreon.com/citizendame, and you get bonus episodes. We have finished off our Alfred Hitchcock Presents series, and we're going to be starting a new one very, very soon. We also have a few bonus films for spooky season. We've got the last Conjuring movie, Conjuring Last Rites, which was a lot of fun to talk about. And we'll be doing, I think, plenty more bonus episodes as well. And of course, we have our Ko-Fi. That's ko-fi.com/citizendame. And you can find us in a multitude of places. Our website is citizendamepod.com. And if you want to send us an email, we're citizendamepod@gmail.com. And we are on the various socials. We are on Instagram and Blue Sky @CitizenDamePod and on Letterboxd @CitizenDame. And of course, you can get in touch with us individually. Karen, where are you?
I am on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky @Karen M. Peterson.
And I am on Instagram and Letterboxd @LHBusiness. And that will close us out for this week. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Count Dracula sleeps in this coffin, but rises every night at sunset. Chick is right. This is awful silly stuff. Dracula. Chick! You know that person you said that there's no such person?
Yes.
I think he's in there, in person. I was reading a sign over here, this one down here.
Yeah.
Dracula's legend. All of a sudden I heard,
That's the wind.
it should get oiled.
Listen, stop reading this thing. That's a lot of phony baloney to fool McDougal's customers. Now fold up that canvas. Get busy. Come on.
Dracula can change himself at will into a vampire bat, flying about the countryside. Flying.
Listen, you're making enough noise to wake up the dead.
I don't have to wake him up. He's up. I saw a hand.
You saw a hand?
Uh-huh.
Where?
Right over there.
Let me see it.
Right over there.
Where is it?
I saw a hand there.
You don't know what you're talking about. You're all excited reading this legend. Now listen. Listen, Wilbur. I know there's no such a person as Dracula. You know there's no such a person as Dracula.
But does Dracula know it?
Now listen to me. McDougal will be here any minute with the insurance agent. Now get to work.